It always starts the same way: quiet, intoxicating, and almost unreal. You meet someone and they seem to see you in a way no one else ever has. They say all the right things, mirror your dreams, your fears, your soul. In their presence, you feel chosen, seen, significant, and that feeling is a drug. But underneath the magic is a warning, a look that lasts too long, a compliment laced with control, a silence that feels like punishment. These are not accidents. These are red flags. But you're too enthralled to see them for what they are. You mistake intensity for intimacy and attention for affection. You tell yourself this is what love must feel like. After all, real love is supposed to be overwhelming, isn't it? That's what you've been taught. That's what you've seen. So you dismiss the knots in your stomach, the confusion, the way your voice grows quieter with every passing week. And slowly, the person you were begins to vanish. This is how it happens, not through violence, but through seduction, not through force, but through erosion. Freud once wrote that we are not only driven by the desire to live, but also haunted by a compulsion to repeat. We return again and again to the scenes of our earliest wounds, trying to master them. You were trained long ago to ignore the signs. Maybe you had a parent who loved you conditionally, or withdrew affection when you didn't please them. You learned to trade authenticity for approval. And now, as an adult, you unconsciously seek out what is familiar, not what is healthy. You call it chemistry, but it's just your nervous system recognizing the pattern. You mistake being triggered for being in love. Jung said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And so, you stay. You try harder. You make excuses. You wait for the person they were in the beginning to come back. But that person was a mask. What you're dealing with now is the truth, the gaslighting, the coldness, the blame. That is who they are. But you still hold on. Because facing the truth would mean facing yourself. And that is the real fear. Not losing them, but confronting the parts of you that believed this was love in the first place. That is where healing begins. And that is where the story truly starts. We like to think we choose the people in our lives based on love, chemistry, or values. But for many of us, attraction is not conscious at all. It is a reenactment, a compulsion. Freud called it the repetition compulsion, a drive rooted in trauma that forces us to unconsciously recreate the very scenarios that once hurt us, in the hope that this time, we'll master them, that we'll be seen, that we'll be loved by the very type of person who once rejected us. But this never works. Instead, we end up drawn to people who resemble our early wounds: emotionally unavailable parents, narcissistic caregivers, cold authority figures. And so we chase the emotionally distant, tolerate the manipulative, and crave the one who withholds affection. We say we want love, but we seek familiarity. The pain feels like home. Jung believed this repetition isn't random. It's the psyche's way of forcing us to confront the parts of ourselves we've exiled into the unconscious, the rejected child, the voiceless self, the internalized critic. Each toxic partner is an actor in a play written long ago, cast in the role of a parent, a wound, a trauma. And we keep watching the same scene unfold, hoping for a different ending. But no amount of trying to earn love from the wrong person will heal the past. This is not love. It's psychological time travel. It's a trap that feeds on our deepest fear, that if we stop chasing, we will confirm our worst suspicion, that we are not worthy of love at all. And yet, the only way to break the pattern is to stop playing the role, to recognize the pain for what it is, not a sign to try harder, but a message from the unconscious. You are not here to be hurt again. You are here to wake up, to stop handing your worth over to those who mirror your wounds, to turn inward and ask, who taught me I must suffer to be loved? And why have I believed them for so long? Healing begins the moment you see the pattern and refuse to repeat it. Not with the next person, not with the same person, and not with yourself. You cannot change the past, but you can stop being loyal to it. The trauma was not your choice. But healing? That is. And it begins the moment you stop confusing suffering for love. You see the signs, the dismissive tone, the subtle guilt trips, the way they twist your words and make you doubt your own perception. You feel the tension in your body, the tightness in your chest, the pit in your stomach every time you're around them. But you stay. You justify. You say they're just going through a hard time, that no one's perfect, that maybe you're too sensitive, and then you call it love. But it's not love. It's fear. Fear of being alone, fear of being wrong, fear that maybe this is all you're worthy of. The truth is, when love has been associated with pain early in life, you grow up believing that suffering is a normal part of connection. You confuse inconsistency with passion, manipulation with intensity, distance with mystery. You tell yourself stories to make sense of the chaos. They act this way because they're hurt, because they need your help, because they love you in their own way. But beneath every excuse is a red flag you've chosen not to see. And this blindness is not weakness, it's survival. As children, many of us had to overlook red flags in order to stay attached to the very people who hurt us. We couldn't afford to see the truth because seeing it meant losing the bond we depended on. So we became experts at denying reality. And now, as adults, we carry this same defense mechanism into our relationships. We see red flags and our nervous system says, "This is familiar. This is safe." Not because it is, but because it's what we know. Jung said that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The red flags you ignore are not outside you. They live inside you. They are unhealed parts of you that crave resolution. And every time you justify disrespect, you are betraying yourself. Love does not require you to abandon your intuition. Real love makes you feel safe, not confused. It brings peace, not chaos. The moment you stop explaining away the pain and start trusting your instincts, everything changes. You start protecting yourself, not the person hurting you. And that shift is everything. Because self-betrayal is not love. Tolerating pain is not loyalty. The red flags are not tests to pass. They are warnings to heed. Your peace is not negotiable. And the longer you ignore the signs, the more you delay the life you were meant to live. By the time the damage becomes obvious, it no longer feels like damage. It feels like your fault. You've been conditioned to believe that if only you were more patient, more loving, more understanding, then maybe the person who hurts you wouldn't be so cruel. You carry the weight of their chaos as if it's your duty to fix it. You apologize for things you didn't do. You walk on eggshells, anticipate their moods, twist yourself into knots just to keep the peace. But none of it works. Because the truth is, it was never about you. A narcissist doesn't want love. They want control. They don't seek connection, they seek supply. Someone to validate their fragile ego, someone to blame when their emptiness starts to surface. And if you're empathic, nurturing, or wounded in just the right way, you become the perfect target. Freud understood this dynamic well. He called it projective identification, when someone unconsciously forces parts of themselves onto another person, then punishes them for carrying those very traits. They feel ashamed, so they make you feel ashamed. They feel unworthy, so they convince you that you're not good enough. The pain you feel isn't weakness. It's a sign you're absorbing what doesn't belong to you. Over time, you stop trusting your instincts. You question your memory, your perceptions, even your reality. And this is the most dangerous part. Not just the gaslighting from them, but the internal gaslighting you begin to do to yourself. Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it really is all my fault. But none of these are true. Jung said that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives and we will call it fate. The belief that you are responsible for other people's behavior is not fate, it's programming. A survival strategy from childhood, where perhaps love came with conditions and safety came from appeasement. Now in adulthood, you're repeating the script, but here's the truth: their rage, their silence, their cruelty, that is their burden to carry. You are not to blame for their inability to love. You are not the cause of their chaos. You are simply the one who stood too close, who hoped too deeply, who loved too much in a place where love was never truly welcomed. And none of that makes you weak. It makes you human. The healing begins when you finally say, "This is not mine to carry anymore." The beginning feels like a dream. They mirror your values, your pain, your hopes. They seem to see you in a way no one else has. You tell yourself, "Finally, someone who understands me." But what you don't see is the strategy behind the attention. This isn't intimacy, it's seduction, it's the bait. They study you with surgical precision, learn what you crave, and then become it. Freud called this the idealization phase, where the narcissist places you on a pedestal, but not because they love you. They love how you make them feel. You become a reflection of their own grandiosity, a tool to reinforce their self-image. Jung might say it's the shadow wearing a mask of light. It's not love, it's ego inflation. And here's the trap. Because it felt so real in the beginning, you keep chasing that high, trying to return to the version of them that never actually existed. When the devaluation begins, when they start pulling away, criticizing you, growing cold or distant, you don't see it as abuse. You see it as a loss of something sacred. You blame yourself. You think, "What did I do wrong?" But the truth is you did nothing wrong. You were never loved, you were used. Love requires vulnerability, but narcissists only mimic vulnerability to create dependency. They don't love you, they need you. And the moment you stop feeding their ego, they begin to starve, and so they punish. They withdraw, invalidate, and ghost, then come back just enough to keep you hooked. It's not just psychological abuse, it's chemical warfare. Your brain becomes addicted to the cycle, highs of praise, lows of abandonment. This is not love, this is trauma bonding. And the cruel irony is, the more compassionate you are, the longer you stay. You think you're being loyal. They know you're being loyal, and they exploit it. Jung said that until you confront your own darkness, you'll meet it in others, disguised as fate. The narcissist enters your life as if sent by destiny, but destiny has nothing to do with it. This is manipulation, masked as love. And the moment you see that clearly is the moment the spell begins to break. You don't miss them, you miss the illusion. And once that illusion is shattered, you can begin to reclaim your soul. It doesn't happen all at once. The loss of self is subtle. You start changing your tone to avoid arguments, biting your tongue to keep the peace. You abandon your needs, silence your instincts, and question your own emotions. You become smaller, less visible in your own life. But you don't realize it's happening. You think you're adapting. You think this is compromise. But in reality, you're disappearing. This is the narcissist's true goal. Not to love you, but to erase you and replace you with a version that serves them. Freud called this ego preservation. They destroy others so they can protect their fragile self-image. You stop laughing like you used to. You second-guess your decisions. Your opinions grow quieter. You don't recognize yourself in the mirror anymore, not because you've changed, but because you've been reshaped by fear. A narcissist doesn't just want power. They want psychological domination. You begin to live in reaction to them. If they're happy, you feel safe. If they're cold, you panic. Your nervous system becomes wired around their moods, not your own needs. You become a puppet in a play you didn't audition for. Jung said the greatest tragedy is to live someone else's life, and the scariest part is you adjust to the pain. You normalize it. You start to believe this is just how relationships are. That love is supposed to hurt. That loyalty means endurance. But that's not love. That's trauma. And trauma makes you forget what healthy even feels like. You forget what it's like to be relaxed, to be yourself, to not walk on eggshells. You become a version of yourself that exists only to survive. This isn't your fault. It's the slow erosion of identity caused by chronic emotional manipulation. But even if you've lost yourself, you can return. The first step is recognizing that this shrinking is not growth. It's submission. And you were not born to submit. The narcissist may have tried to make you disappear, but the truth is, you're still here. And if you can still feel the pain, then you can still feel the truth. And the truth is, you deserve to take up space again. There comes a moment when you begin to reclaim your voice. Maybe you set a small boundary. Maybe you say no for the first time. Maybe you stop apologizing for things that aren't your fault. And at that moment, the mask cracks. The narcissist's charm evaporates, and what you see beneath it is not just anger, it's rage. But this rage isn't caused by your cruelty. It's caused by your courage. They don't hate your weakness, they hate your strength. Because strength threatens their illusion of superiority. They built a kingdom where your silence was obedience and your empathy was servitude. The moment you speak up, you become dangerous. Not because you're cruel, but because you're no longer controllable. Freud observed this dynamic in the narcissistic wound. Their grandiose self-image is so fragile that even a hint of resistance feels like annihilation. So they lash out. They demean you, twist your words, play the victim, or unleash emotional attacks designed to break you back down. But this isn't personal. It's their fear of losing control. Jung might call it the shadow's revolt. They projected their unworthiness onto you, made you carry their shame, and now that you're setting it down, they panic. Because without someone to blame, they have to face themselves, and that's unbearable. So they try to drag you back in, with guilt, with rage, with false apologies, with promises to change. But none of it is real. It's not about love. It's about power. And here's the truth. They never loved you. They loved your submission. They never respected you. They feared your independence. And now that you're waking up, they will do everything they can to pull you back into the fog. But you've seen too much. You've felt the cost. And that memory is dangerous to them, because it means you might leave. And you should. Because the love you were searching for in them is not there. It never was. The strength you're looking for has always been in you. The narcissist's rage is not proof of your cruelty. It's proof that their illusion is dying, and your truth is being born. After the rage comes something worse, remorse, or at least the illusion of it. They tell you they're sorry, that they were just stressed, broken, traumatized, that they didn't mean it, and you want to believe them. Because believing them means the pain wasn't for nothing. So you cling to the hope that underneath the cruelty is someone who truly loves you. But that hope is the very trap that keeps you bound. Freud called this repetition compulsion, the drive to return to the scene of the trauma, to try to master it. You stay because you want to fix what hurt you. You want to rewrite the ending. And the narcissist knows this. So they dangle it like a drug, a promise of change, a breadcrumb of affection, a flash of the idealized version of themselves you first met. But it's not real, it's a tactic. Jung said we are not what happened to us, we are what we choose to become. But as long as you are trapped in guilt, you cannot become. Because guilt keeps you loyal to your abuser. You start thinking you're the problem. That maybe you are too sensitive, too difficult, too much. You forget that you were fine before them, that you were whole, that your empathy, your loyalty, your love, those were not flaws. They were weapons in the wrong hands. The narcissist exploits the very best parts of you to keep you in chains. They don't want reconciliation, they want reset. They want you to forget. But healing begins the moment you stop blaming yourself for someone else's abuse. The moment you stop excusing cruelty because of a sob story. The moment you realize that empathy without boundaries is self-destruction. The only thing you owe anyone is the truth. And the truth is, no matter how many apologies they offer, no matter how many tears they shed, if their actions haven't changed, then the cycle will repeat. And each time it does, it gets harder to escape. Guilt is not love. Loyalty is not slavery. Forgiveness is not self-erasure. And healing is not waiting for them to become someone they've never been. You finally leave, but it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like death. You doubt yourself. You panic. You question everything. Not because they were good to you, but because they made themselves your world. They made you dependent, Emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. They became the air you breathed, and now that you've walked away, you feel like you're suffocating. This is not love, it's withdrawal. Jung warned that the unconscious seeks its own fulfillment. If you grew up in chaos, then chaos feels familiar. If love was mixed with pain, then pain feels like home. And the narcissist replicates this exact pattern. That's why walking away doesn't feel like liberation. It feels like betrayal. Not of them, but of your own emotional blueprint. You miss them, yes, but more than that. You miss the you that existed in that drama.